Welcome back to another episode of Digging Deep. It is so lovely to have you. I want to start today's episode off with a quote because it was a very important part of me discovering this topic and just deep diving on all the information. So this quote comes from the Black queer author and activist Audre Lorde. She says, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." This theme of self-care as self-preservation, and that in itself being viewed as political warfare, being viewed as resistance, especially in the face of oppression, especially as a woman of color, especially as a person from a marginalized community, someone that experiences deliberate structural violence and systems that are not built to withstand us and sustain our health and well-being, which is technically all of us because we live under capitalism. That is so unbelievably important. And in the current state of our world, just politically, socially, economically, I think one of the best things that we can begin to do is practice radical self-care on a daily basis. And I want this to be very, very clear that by caring for yourself, you're in turn caring for your community. And I think that self-care and community care go hand in hand. They are not mutually exclusive by any means, but I think that learning how to care for yourself sets a good foundation for how you can care for your community. So, it is time to dig deep. Pilates princess, green juice, red light therapy, candles, face masks, sugar scrubs, matching workout and pajama sets, slick back bun, no makeup look, fresh set of nails, skincare routine, shower routine, 75 hard, 6 a.m. morning routine, that girl, clean girl, soft girl, chic girl, high maintenance to be low maintenance, try, but not too hard where people can actually notice your effort. That is the version of self-care that we've all been sold. And I want it to be very clear that the key ingredient in that is sold. We have been offered up this version of self-care that requires us to give money to constantly buy products, which is in service of the machine of capitalism. The commodification of self-care is completely removed from the roots of it, which is caring for yourself because you are the most precious thing to exist. You are your most precious resource to not only yourself, but to the world. And it's really disheartening to see how capitalism has turned such a pure and essential practice like taking care of oneself into this money grab, this way to just feed on people's insecurities and sell them this idea that they're not good enough as they are. Therefore, they constantly need to be buying things to make themselves better and become this ideal version of themselves. Self-care is not rooted in money and rooted in billion-dollar industries like the self-help and self-wellness industry. It is rooted in community-based practices. We're going to get into the history of it in a little bit, but this is the self-care that we've been sold. I want to start us off by reading an article from Substack by Jamila Bradley, which all of her work is incredible, and this one in particular is called "What the Self-Help Industry Has Gotten Wrong About Everything." In this article, she brings up a really interesting point of the idea of boundaries. And with self-care in our modern society and the view that we have on it, a lot of it is external based. It is, how can I buy different products like candles or face masks, sugar scrubs, different things externally to buy more and keep us consuming. And then we think that that's us taking care of ourselves, when really self-care goes much deeper than that. It is about how can I keep my mind, body, and spirit well and healthy and sustainably healthy. But with doing the deeper work comes, how can I practice mindfulness not only in my relationship with myself, but my relationship to others and the world, and thus brings on the conversation of boundaries. But even that message has gotten incredibly warped in our modern society and has turned something that should be empowering and healthy and a practice to build a greater capacity for connections into something that isolates and pushes people away. She writes, "There's a lot of talk about boundaries, cutting ties, and putting yourself first, but very little about the mystical balance of staying near others while staying near to ourselves, even when it's messy or difficult. They sold us an empowerment, but it's more like isolation. Real empowerment isn't about how many people you can keep out. It's about how many meaningful connections you can sustain while honoring yourself at the same time." She says, "Rugged self-preservation disguised as growth." A boundary that isolates isn't a boundary, it's a wall. When the advice leads to isolation, it creates a problem it can keep selling solutions for. I really want us to emphasize that. When the advice leads to isolation, it creates a problem it can keep selling solutions for. The business of self-care, wellness, self-help, self-improvement, all of that deliberately targets people's insecurities, and it makes problems that it can then profit off of. And a lot of the times it promotes this sense of hyper-individualism. Capitalism promotes the sense that we need to only be focused on ourselves, disregard any shred of human empathy for other people, and in turn keep us living in our little bubbles, not caring what happens to other human beings, which, hello, that's not how we were supposed to be. Fun fact, I'm taking an anthropology class right now, and I'm currently learning about economics in relation to anthropology, and just how other cultures live and just different ways of life other than our own. And a really interesting one for me to learn about right now is foraging, the style of foraging, hunting and gathering. And there are different other practices like that as well, but that community system is based on sharing. It is based on mutual aid. It is, I pick up some plants from the garden, give them to you because I know you're hungry, and then you go make me a blanket. We both benefit from that transaction, and it is a mutually beneficial relationship. You are concerned with someone because they're in your community. It doesn't matter if you directly agree with them, if you're directly close to them, but because they are in your community, you care. And the same principle should be applied to our modern society, but because of capitalism and people being turned into machines, being viewed as something to be profited off of instead of something to be nurtured and cared for, the connection and I think just the basis of humanity and being connected to that feeling has been so lost. When we are only focused on ourselves, our own situations, and just how everything makes us feel, not how maybe it could make others feel, we don't go in community with other people because, if you say something that I don't like, I'm immediately going to be done with you. If you disrespect me one time, I'm immediately done with you, instead of facilitating that healthy repair process, which in turn it can then sell solutions for. When you're isolated, you are an easy target because you don't have other people to build ideas off of, maybe be swayed a different route, a more healthier route, and you're just more able to be targeted by the machine of capitalism. When people band together and are in community with each other, when they're in conversation and are sharing resources, whether that is physical, I give you this, you give me that, or mental, just support and talking things through, when you band together, you are much stronger than when you stand alone. Jamila writes, when you're healing alone, self-help becomes the only space where you feel understood, but it also keeps you returning to that same space for validation. This is predation at its finest. I think about this when I was really consuming media about romantic love, last year and the year before, and the year before that. Anyways, and I bought the book, 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty, because I thought that I needed a guide since I'm so inexperienced in that realm, and I thought that I needed someone to tell me step by step, this is how you love someone, this is the wrong way, this is the right way. And something as sacred and special as love has been turned into this how-to, this tutorial, this step-by-step process of heal better, fix yourself, you need to go harder, try harder, love is a numbers game, if you just keep going at it, you'll inevitably find someone, when it shouldn't be something that is marketed and something that you can commodify. Something as precious of a resource as love, as human connection, has now been turned into a commodity, has now been turned into go to my seminar, buy my book, and then you'll find love. Even with dating apps, I will probably make a whole episode about this eventually, which I've already talked about it a lot in other ones, but just the commodification of that is commodifying yourself and love. It is saying that, you have to spend $10 a month if you want to see the finest matches. Only then can you meet your soulmate at this small price. Do you really want love? How bad do you want it? You're not trying hard enough. You just got to pay this fee and then you'll find your soulmate. Again, that's like dangling a treat in front of someone and saying, only if you run 10 miles, then maybe you can get this treat, but maybe not, because who knows if your match is hidden behind Rose Jail. Who's to say? But as I was reflecting on that experience and how that relates to what Jamila wrote, I realized that I don't want someone to tell me exactly how to love someone. I want to go on that journey with my future person. Like, that is something that is really beautiful and should be special. And I would love to experience that without having, I guess, like a blueprint of what it's supposed to look like, or having this mental checklist of like, oh my God, are we following the right steps that Jay Shetty wrote out in his book? Like, that just feels a little weird, icky. And again, that mindset of always being fixated on self-help, how can I improve, what am I going to gain from this, is a way for capitalism to perpetuate. She writes that attachment styles ignore the context of trauma, upbringing, and complex human experiences rather than encouraging empathy and connection. When consuming self-help content, I think it's really important for us to ask ourselves, is it telling me that true healing requires solitude, or does it acknowledge that community and connection are a part of the process? When we are able to care for ourselves, we are then able to show up better and care for our people and care for our community. Self-care is community care. Community care is self-care. The two are not mutually exclusive. They are intrinsically, deeply, forever intertwined. They go hand in hand. One cannot exist without the other. Too much isolation can easily become extremely toxic and very depressing if you're only consuming things by yourself, only around your own energy. And it's really interesting to see like how much that message has been circulated on the internet of just set boundaries, protecting my peace. But when you're protecting your peace to the point of isolation, that is not healthy. We need other people. We are not made to do it alone. Y'all know that I am a feminist through and through. I don't know how you can be a human being and not advocate for rights for people who have not been afforded them historically. But in the topic of self-help, wellness, self-care, women receive much different teachings than men do. For men, a lot of the times it's very extremist red pill people like Andrew Tate, David Goggins, what's that other guy, Joe Rogan, who just preach, go harder, go harder, go harder. Usually they are belittling the men to make them feel shameful to then light a fire up their ass. Go harder, you're a bitch, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. I've already lived 12 days and you lived 1. My day has 6 days because I start at 6 a.m. and then I go. That's their advice. But for women, that does not work. Some women, there are outliers, that is fine if that works for you, but I'm saying in general, the feminine spirit does not respond well to rigidity and to push, work yourself to no return, go. That is not how you care for yourself. That is not how you nourish yourself. And just the self-care that is needed for men and women looks entirely different. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but I do think that it's really interesting to reflect on who is mainly writing books and giving seminars and teachings about what self-care is and making it this cookie cutter definition that everybody should apply to their life. Books like, I think there's a book called like How to Win People and Influence or whatever, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, Atomic Habits, like books like that, sure, can work for some, but in general, we need much more holistic approaches to self-care, because self-care isn't just go on a run and your life will be changed. Wake up at 5 a.m. and your life will change. Just try harder and your life will change. Burn yourself out and your life will change. That's not what works. For women, a big essential part to tapping into your feminine energy is embracing flow, embracing your cyclical living. You're not going to have the same level of productivity and energy because we are on a month-long cycle and we have 4 different seasons that we are changing. That is just how the feminine body works, and it's really, really important for us to tune into that instead of trying to work against it. Work with your body, not against it. And a lot of advice that we are given in the self-help industry is coming from men who don't necessarily acknowledge or even understand that, because that's not their experience. There is this brilliant article called Fascism Thrives on Women's Self-Doubt, and the author writes, we have this idea that fascism arrives in combat boots and military parades. Sometimes it moves quietly through beauty trends and wellness culture. It thrives not through overt force, but through suggestion, through aspiration, through the whisper that you could be better. Fascism operates by distilling a set of ideas that everyone must conform to. And this ties directly back to Audre Lorde's writing of saying how self-care is an act of political warfare. Self-care can be directly used to fight back against oppressive systems. It is a statement saying, I am way too precious to sacrifice myself in name of the machine of capitalism. It is saying that I deserve to be taken care of, and if you won't, the least I can do is care for myself. And with systems like fascism and just governments that don't care for who you are and your well-being and if you live or die, the biggest thing that you can do is fight back and take care of yourself. Take days off. Use your sick time. Call in for mental health days. Find ways to have a self-care routine, whether in your morning or after you get off work, and take your time back. Take your power back. Because these systems are designed to infiltrate our lives in subtle ways that just keep pushing this narrative of commodifying self-care and wellness and making it an unattainable, sustainable thing for us to use. And especially in the conversation of communities that have for so long been left out of the conversation of self-care. I'm talking about minority groups, marginalized communities, women, queer people, immigrants, black people, anybody that has been left out of the conversation are often the ones that are experiencing the most amount of burnout, overworking themselves, and the ones that need the care the most. But this resource has been removed from their community because the machine doesn't view them as valuable enough and doesn't care if they take care of themselves. Another way that capitalism and just the commodification of wellness has infiltrated our society is through beauty trends, through pushing this ideal version of what a woman typically should be. I feel like men are not as targeted by this because they feed off of women's insecurities, and that's a whole discussion that I hope is pretty evident and obvious to a lot of us, but women can be very easily targeted by these messages, and deliberately too. The author writes that the more a woman adheres to the traditional beauty standards, the closer she aligns herself with the visual and ideological parameters of fascism. Not because beauty itself is fascist, but because fascism relies on rigid order, on a world where there is a right kind of woman and a wrong kind. She says that to be beautiful in a fascist framework is to be validated. To be validated is to be safe. This is why when there is a specific beauty standard, a specific type of even wellness routine to aspire to, people that follow that more strategically and are more okay with not deviating from that path are safe. They are granted freedom. They are granted less scrutiny than people who fight back against that, who say that this isn't working and that there needs to be a broader, more holistic approach to this issue. That's why there's so many different beauty trends that flow in and out of our feeds, because they are constantly pushing new narratives of what it means to be that girl, what it means to be a hot girl, a cool girl, something for you to aspire to. If they constantly are changing the narrative of what is deemed okay in our society, then they can constantly sell us products to profit off of. And this is why I have such a hard time resonating with the idea of niching down and constant aesthetic trends, even with the podcast, like picking a specific theme or a specific category so that I can then be marketed to consumers. I obviously understand that in terms of like growing an audience, and I'm pretty sure that this podcast is listed as self-help, but I think I did that pretty strategically without even knowing it, because I do have this because I want to help people and have them help themselves. But I think that a holistic approach, which is what I try to have, is good to like subtly put in that very murky water of hyper individualistic advice that is seen in the self-help industry. But even with just niching down in terms of yourself, like for women, there are so many different types of aesthetics that you can follow. There's a rise of like the cottagecore girl. Last year it was like Miley Stewart summer, coastal granddaughter. I've seen like mob wife. There's just so many things that women are expected to be and also change constantly. And there's an added layer to that as a black woman of like what is deemed acceptable for you to be. And there's like the earthy black girl. There's like the generic stereotype that people automatically group you in of being ghetto. And there's just so many layers of what you should and shouldn't do, what you can and can't do based on what you look like, based on the access to resources you have, which is all rooted in the capitalistic principle of making you a product to be sold. Fascism does not need to tell women to submit. It simply creates conditions where submission looks like self-improvement. If the machine can feed you this idea of giving you a bunch of aesthetics to choose from and then the one that you pick is inherently your choice, then the messages keep going and going and going. When really that was a deliberate trend cycle, a deliberate messaging being fed to women specifically to keep them buying. Things like the 12-step skincare routine, Pilates princess, clean girl aesthetic, 5 a.m. productive morning routines, etc., etc., etc. Fascism does not need to police women directly when it has already convinced them to police themselves. This relates to the idea pushed onto us by the self-care industry that we must constantly be in a state of improvement, especially women, which inherently convinces us that we are not enough just as we are. There's always something to do. There's always something to fix, always something to heal. If it's not your attachment style, it's your closed comedones on your skin. If it's not your shower routine, it's your morning routine. If it's not your morning routine, it's your nighttime routine. If it's not your nighttime routine, it's how many hot girl walks are you going on. If it's not that, it's your workouts. Are you doing bulky workouts? We can't do bulky because we're women. We have to do Pilates. But if it's Pilates, are you doing hot Pilates, sculpt, yoga sculpt? There is no end. And that's not self-care. That is just commodification of wellness. That is just making wellness into this unattainable thing. Wellness should not be something you have to earn. It is something that you inherently are given because you are human, because you deserve it. That is not something you should have to burn yourself out of, and then you will be like, okay, finally I can slow down. Finally I can meditate. Finally I can go for a walk and look at nature and take deep breaths and admire what it means to be alive. That is not something you should have to earn. That is something that we already have access to. And whenever I get really caught up in the self-help spiral, and stay with me because I know it's going to sound cheesy, but I truly just look at nature and think about how abundant the trees are, how abundant flowers are, how abundant a resource oxygen is. Trees just provide that to us freely without us even asking because we deserve it. We don't have to earn that. It's just there because we exist. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there is an obsession, especially for women, with aestheticizing ourselves, but also with being hot, with being cool, with being that girl, which is no surprise because of the beauty standards and this hyper awareness of your physical presentation that women have, dating back thousands, hundreds of years, have had to be aware of, because that's a sign of our worth, or it has been a sign of our worth for forever. But it's just really interesting to see how embedded that is in the advice. Like, instead of just saying like, oh, you should eat this healthy meal because it's good for you and it'll give you energy and nourish your body and allow it to perform and do good things for you, you should eat it because it's a hot girl meal. Or instead of just saying you should work out because movement is one of the best things for your mental and physical health, you should do it because you're a hot girl, and hot girls have big butts. Like, and this is such a layered conversation, but working at a gym for almost 2 years, I had to, and I'm still in the process of it, but I've gotten a lot better at it, of just unpacking my own relationship with my fixation on wanting to be that girl or wanting to be hot, which I don't care about. But again, that subtle messaging became like the forefront of my mind, and I would be like, oh my gosh, I need to go to the gym because I need to get a bigger butt because people care about that, and if I get a bigger butt, then maybe I'll get a boyfriend. And it's like, if I heard my daughter talking to herself like that, I would freak out and feel so sad, because you are so much more than that. And also the thing is one, obviously, you have way more to offer this world than what your butt looks like. And I know that sounds like so reductive, but a lot of the messaging, even with women who have been persuaded into thinking this way of I always have to be presenting in a certain type of way, even that can become so destructive. And there's always going to be something to aspire to. There's always going to be more. If you get the bigger butt in the gym, you're going to be like, okay, how can I fix my arms? How can I fix my waist? How can I fix my abs? Oh, my butt's gotten smaller. Let me go crazier. There's always something to aspire to, specifically in the wellness industry and how that ties to beauty for women. There is always a changing standard of what it means to be beautiful, what it means to be enough, what it means to be of value to society. And that's why I think one of the best things that we can do, especially as women, is remove ourselves from that programming and understand that we are so much more than how we present. This is genuinely just our avatar, and it is a gift that we get to spend this existence, this time in this body. So why would we waste it worrying about what we look like? Think back to ancient times before they had mirrors. They didn't look at themselves this much. It is not natural to have a mirror everywhere you go, to have a phone on you and constantly being critiqued, whether by others or you critiquing yourself of what you look like. That's not normal. That's not normal. You are not meant to constantly look at yourself and then tweak your appearance to be like everybody else. That leads to a whole different conversation of BBL, lip filler, getting work done. But we don't have time for that today. But just know, I see you, and I'm questionable of your behavior. With the conversation of self-care in modern context, there's a silent presence of privilege. Only people who have access to the money, the resources, and the time to indulge in these self-care practices that we've been sold can then get the benefits of them. Things like wellness retreats, going on extravagant long vacations, taking time off of work that you probably don't even have, and especially not if you're a parent or if you work a job. You don't have time to do that, so then that's not accessible to you. If you are a minority group, you are not given the same grace of slowing down because the world has piled on so much onto you already that you can barely exhale in your daily life. And I've experienced a negative light being put on me when I took time off for my mental health, and that's an added pressure that makes people reluctant to even practice these things. There is a privilege when it comes to taking care of yourself, at least the version of self-care that we've been sold, making it this out of reach thing that only the wealthy can have access to. There's an episode of We Can Do Hard Things podcast that talks about real self-care versus faux self-care. Faux self-care doesn't address the deeper changes that need to be made. Faux self-care is like putting a band-aid over a bullet hole. It just glazes over the deep-rooted systemic, societal issues that are keeping people from accessing real self-care. Corporations are strategically designed to feed off of people's insecurities and in turn offer quick fixes to issues that they created. The commodification of wellness is a form of structural violence, and I am learning about this in my anthropology class, and I'm very, very interested because there's lots of just juicy connections that I'm making in just the way that the world is ran, and just how different communities function. But structured violence is intentional, and it targets specific communities, and the commodification of wellness is a form of that because, like I've mentioned before, it places the resource, the abundant, limitless resource of taking care of yourself as something to be bought, something that you have to buy a product for, and then you can take care of yourself. Or you have to take time off of work, and then you can take care of yourself. When instead, you have access to that resource at any moment. Wellness was never meant to be something you had to buy your way into or shrink yourself into this aesthetic box to fit into. There is an obsession, specifically with women, of fixing ourselves, of becoming your best self, becoming that girl. And it's really disheartening to see because these messages start so young. I know that for a really long time, I was so focused on buying self-help books, and again, I think it does build a good awareness of what can I do to be better? Like, how can I change these negative habits or traits that I have and learn how to unlearn them and then implement healthy habits? But I found myself, and I'm still kind of in the chokehold of that a little bit, of viewing myself as a self-improvement project instead of just a human being. And there's this idea that you constantly need to be optimizing yourself in order to be of service to the machine of capitalism. And that message isn't as explicitly stated, but through programming, through subtle programming, it is definitely achieved and emphasized. Like when I was a month ago healing from another episode of burnout, and I was trying to implement better habits into my day because I know I needed to be more proactive about that just for my own well-being, I still was giving myself anxiety of just focusing on, am I doing this perfectly? Am I getting the exact right amount of sleep? Going to bed at this exact time? If I'm a minute late, I'm going to freak out. If I wake up a minute late, I'm going to freak out. And constantly overfilling my to-do list, over-optimizing, and viewing myself as something that always needs to be fixed. No matter how good I did that day, no matter how present I was always thinking, well, I could have been better. Well, I still have this to work on tomorrow. I think self-awareness is beautiful. There's a lot of people in this world that lack it, and there are negative effects because of that. Self-awareness and wanting to better yourself for the greater good of the world is a beautiful, beautiful practice. But when that self-awareness leaves no room for compassion for yourself and no room for normal human error and normal human, I don't even want to say regression, but just fluctuation, that's not self-care. That is just another way for capitalism to convince you that you need to be something to fix. Another way that capitalism convinces you to hate yourself. Gia Tolentino writes in her article, Athleisure, Bar, and Kale, The Tyranny of the Ideal Woman, How We Became Suckers for the Hard Labor of Self-Optimization. This is an incredible article, and I know she wrote a book, I'm pretty sure, about this topic as well, but this specifically speaks to women. The ideal woman is always optimizing. The ideal woman can be whatever she wants to be, as long as she manages to act upon the belief that perfecting herself and streamlining her relationship to the world can be a matter of both work and pleasure, or in other words, of lifestyle. The ideal woman steps into a stratum of expensive juices, boutique exercise classes, and skincare routines, and vacations, and there she happily remains. The psychological parasite of the ideal woman has evolved to survive in an ecosystem that pretends to resist her. We are always being sold an aesthetic or an archetype to follow. It was muscle mommy, now it's transitioned into Pilates princess. It was a full beat and is now transitioned into no makeup look. There is always something new for the machine of capitalism to sell us, specifically women, because it convinces us that we are not enough as we are. It convinces us that there has to be something that we need to fix in order to be more acceptable for society. And this in turn is turning ourselves into a commodity. The commodification of self is directly tied to why it is so hard for us to rest, why it is so hard for us to actually take care of ourselves in a way that feels nourishing and replenishes us and allows us to feel refreshed and capable and worthy of just existing as we are and not existing to be critiqued. Bar feels like exercise the way that sweet green feels like eating. Both might better be categorized as mechanisms that help you adopt to arbitrary, prolonged agony. And in her article, she dissects how different trends, I guess you could say, in the wellness industry, like sweet green or going to bar classes, have turned into this way for, I was going to say communism. No, have turned into ways for capitalist programming to be perpetuated. It has made these things into aesthetics, which is then another way for people to be marketed to, and for capitalism to continue to sell us this little band-aid cover-up fix of what they want us to believe is wellness, which doesn't address any of the deeper-rooted issues. Yes, going to workout classes and moving your body is beneficial for your health. Yes, eating a healthier meal like sweet green or something that has a salad can be good for you. But when it is being used as a way to just numb yourself from the world and over convenience your life instead of addressing the deeper issues and the deeper practices that will actually fix your issues, that's just another way for wellness to become something that you can be sold. Learning how to function more efficiently within an exhausting system. This seems to me to be the thing with bar that people pay $40 a class for, the investment that always brings back returns. Adhering to the beauty standard in more subtle, seemingly empowered ways is how women are told that they can take care of themselves, whether it's through the clothes that they wear, buying Gymshark sets to be seen as a muscle mommy, to be seen as someone who knows what they're doing in the gym, going to Pilates in a matching set, having the right mat, the right little headband, the slick back bun, the no makeup look, the big gold chunky earrings, having the little, I don't even know what they're called, like the shin muffle thingies like that you can wear to make you look all cute. That's like, I understand that you want to look cute. That's not wrong. That's not what I'm critiquing in this. What I'm asking for us to do is just look at why we are so obsessed with all of those things. Is it something that we actually want, or is it something that we've been sold that we have to care about? And these trend cycles are very deliberate. They're not just there by accident. It doesn't happen to fall on your For You page or your Instagram Explore page by accident. It is because that is a way for capitalism to sell you something and to sell you this product, but in a deeper way, sell you this belief that you constantly have to be following trends and improving yourself in some way. Women who wore exercise clothing outside an exercise setting and who, like ballerinas, have heightened reasons to monitor the market value of their looks. Athleisure, like all optimization experiences and products, is reliably comfortable and supportive in a world that is not. If the norm is for you to constantly be changing with the trend cycles, buying something, or you're going to be looked as weird and being isolated socially, it's easier to do that instead of fighting back. It is easier to do that instead of questioning it. It is easier for you to go along with the norm instead of asking yourself, is this something I really resonate with? Which is why so many people are stuck in that trap of self-optimization, self-improvement, this obsession with commodifying themselves without even realizing they're doing it. Clothing symbolizes social ranking, and in the community of wellness, there are always different clothing trends that pop up that tell us that that is a version of self-care. Buy yourself new shoes. Buy yourself that new workout set. Buy yourself that new free people dress because it's what your favorite influencer is wearing and they have a code for you to use. All of those things are faux forms of self-care that we are marketed to prioritize instead of doing the deeper work. There are rewards for succeeding under capitalism and patriarchy. There are rewards for even being willing to work on its terms. We have not optimized our wages, our childcare systems, our political representation. We still hardly even think of parity as realistic in those arenas, let alone anything approaching perfection. We have maximized our capacity as market assets. That's all. As a collective society, we have yet to do the deep work of analyzing ways in which our system has failed us and truly creating change within our communities. And I think that there are beautiful examples of people who have come together and created a good foundation for us to build off of in terms of self-care, but the larger conversation, specifically in the self-help industry, the general idea is that you constantly need to be fixing yourself. You constantly need to be buying things, and the things that we're sold are just band-aid solutions. They're not things that actually address the deep-rooted, systemic, collective, intentional, harmful effects of living under capitalism. Damn. And women in particular receive contradictory notions that they need to do it all, be a mom and a dedicated wife, while also being a badass entrepreneur and career-driven woman. And this is why they're more susceptible to be targeted by the quick fixes that self-care sells us. Candles, baths, massages, wellness retreats, mindfulness books in general. All of those things are sold to us as being the fix to self-care, as being the antidote to burnout, as an antidote to living under a incredibly harsh government system, an incredibly harsh economic system that is designed to make you exhausted. That exhaustion is strategic. They do not want us to be fully healthy and awake and in tune with our bodies, because if we are that, then we're able to fight back. We're able to question why they're doing what they're doing. If they're able to strategically keep a majority of the population asleep and silent and numb to what's going on in the world, they can continue pushing their agenda. They can continue viewing us as machines, not people. But when we wake up, when we learn about how to care for ourselves, when we share that knowledge with others, we are then able to create a better world for every single human being. We are able to make sustainable, actionable change, and on a grand scale. That way we don't have to feel like our life isn't our own. That way we don't have to feel like we don't want to be here. That way we don't have to feel like we're dreading existing and we constantly need an escape from our reality. Glennon Doyle states that real self-care is about making our actual lives less shitty so we don't need to escape. In the YouTube video, How the Wellness Industry Makes You Addicted to Solutions by Ashley Embers, she reflects on all the things that I'm talking about, of how this hyper-masculine, rigid blueprint of what it means to take care of yourself has really made us a sick society and a more isolated and lonely one. She says that self-improvement/optimization is like working on something that you can never quite be finished. You are the something. You are the thing that capitalism is constantly trying to sell, constantly trying to make into a product, instead of understanding that you are a human being with a heart and soul and lungs, and you don't need more things. We really don't need more things. We have villainized living a normal life. And she brings up a really interesting point of how it is no longer acceptable to just be normal and not want to wake up at 5 a.m. and have a side hustle on top of your usual 9 to 5 and on top of being a parent and a human being in this world. And she says that there are drawbacks of waking up early. In order to wake up at 5 a.m., you should be going to bed around 9 p.m., which means missing out on events, people, memories, experiences, etc. And this brings up an interesting conversation of the costs of community and what it means to be an active member in your community. Because the price of community is you're probably going to lose sleep. You're probably not going to have all the time that you would usually have to invest in your self-care routine, because you're sacrificing that to go be in community with people. But I think that that is an interesting thing that we should ask ourselves of, is that worth it? And almost always the answer is going to be yes, because taking care of yourself isn't always an individual pursuit. It is not always accomplished by being by yourself. Self-care is community care. Community care is self-care. And she says that I would rather sometimes be a little sleepier the next day and know that my marriage is thriving. And she was talking about her own experience of having a longer conversation with your partner, even if it's late in the night, because you know that that will help keep that connection alive. Instead of just saying, nope, I have a strict routine I need to stick to. Your conversation doesn't fit into my routine, so I can't do it. I have to optimize my time, and I didn't time block for us to have this chat and for it to take this long, so sorry, bud, gonna have to cut you off, gotta go to bed. She says that your community should be a higher priority than your self-care. Our fixation on selfishness, individualistic pursuits, and individual healing leads to a reluctance to show up for our community. She brings up really good points about how we are all chasing this curated image of what success is. How overtracking, habit stacking, always monitoring your behavior like you're a test subject, not a human being, leads to a lot of our dissatisfaction and a lot of our symptoms of burnout that, if unchecked and unhealed, can prolong and progress into genuine chronic issues. Our obsession with winning your morning to win your day, that very masculine-centered narrative that even infiltrates female-centered spaces. Algorithms reinforcing narratives that you need to be in a constant state of healing, hypervigilance, and self-improvement. And self-optimization. The aesthetic, idealistic Instagram highlight reel lifestyle is no longer just extravagant vacations, blue-ass water, and travel bloggers. Now it preys on people's lifestyles, their values, their ways of going about their day-to-day lives. Green juices, 75 hard, protein powders, and nervous system regulations are all just token words, aesthetics, and methods for capitalism and the commodification of the self to be perpetuated. Gen Z is already experiencing an overwhelming quarter-life crisis, and adding on to this just makes it even more overwhelming to come to terms with. Wellness influencers prey on the shame and quest for meaning that Gen Z exudes. I'm doing a whole episode about purpose coming up very, very soon, but it's really interesting to see that a lot of people just equate their value and meaning in this world to be synonymous with how much they produce in that day, tying their worth directly to a machine of capitalism, instead of viewing yourself as a garden, something that needs to be watered and nurtured. You are withholding rest, which is an essential need for any human being. You are withholding that from yourself because you have been deliberately programmed to think that your worthiness is tied to how much you do or produce or put out into the world. She says that the more we optimize, the more we homogenize life. And this is something that I've noticed as well, just being someone on self-help TikTok and just in that brand of content. Everybody seems to be living just about the same day. You wake up between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., you make your matcha with your cold foam in your cute little glass, and make sure it's a glass straw. You put on your cute little matching workout set, and you go to either yoga sculpt, Pilates, or if you're a fit girl, muscle mommy, you can go to a gym and lift heavy weights, and then you come home, do your 12-step shower routine, skincare routine, put your hair in a slick back bun, do light makeup because you don't want to do too much, but you have lip filler because you need to adhere to the beauty standards, and then you go and you do a daily vlog because we all work from home now, apparently. And it's like, and you eat your little avocado toast breakfast or yogurt bowl, which, don't get me wrong, those are good. But it's just very interesting to see how self-help and hustle culture and this self-improvement narrative has been rebranded into more personal ways of targeting people's ways of life, and how pushing this narrative, especially to women, has made us all just look the same. Whether it's the way that we dress, the way that we believe, the way we act, it is making everybody act cookie cutter. There's a Substack by Aisha Khan called "Is Our Fixation on Healing, Self-Care, and Self-Improvement Making Us Sicker?" She writes that the self-help industry is worth more than $52 billion, and the self-care wellness industry is worth over $5.6 trillion. Healing has now been used to essentially convince us to be more useful to the machine of capitalism versus healing to reclaim autonomy and self-agency. And Glennon Doyle mentions this in her podcast as well, talking about the practice of rest and how that is a huge form of self-care that we have long rejected or just not paid attention to. But even with rest, the narrative is, I'm resting so I can then come back and work even better. I can then come back and be even more productive and more useful to the machine of capitalism, instead of resting so that I can work with myself and my peers to dream and build a way out of this machine that is destructing all of us. She says, any obsessive pursuit of self-improvement or self-healing takes on a paradoxical toll on us. The more we focus on feeling better, the more self-absorbed we are, and the harder it is to feel better. The more we focus on fixing ourselves in private, the harder it is to find ease. The author in this article says that chasing home within oneself is a recipe for disappointment, and that the pursuit of self-reliance is a pursuit of pain. And it ties to the idea that cutting everybody off, setting what we think are boundaries but are really just ways to isolate ourselves, is a form of self-harm. And we've been sold this idea that it is a form of self-empowerment. I personally disagree with the belief that choosing home within oneself is a recipe for disappointment, because I have found a lot of my confidence and just my belief in myself building a stable foundation within myself by isolating in healthy amounts, I do see the dangers of complete social isolation. We heal in community. A problem shared is a problem halved. And I think that when people aren't able to balance the two of existing by yourself and then being able to share that with your community, that's where we see a lot of negative effects. Over-fixating on self-improvement leads us to become increasingly self-absorbed in a society that is already designed to breed narcissism and cutthroat individualism. Without collectivist infrastructure, our minds are already our default sanctuaries, and in the absence of connection, they become prisons. We are already, without even us being aware of it, being sold an idea that we need to be focused on ourselves and only ourselves. And with the new age language around mental health, self-care, boundaries, and all of that, it just further pushes us away from people and turns us away from facilitating healthy connection with other human beings. Our desire to feel better shouldn't be focused on self-gratification or self-improvement in the absence of community. The goal should be, how can I better myself so I can better show up in the world? How can I be better for not only myself but the people around me, and share my practices that have worked with other people so that we can all work together to collectively build a society that isn't profiting off of our insecurities, that isn't profiting off of our exhaustion, and isn't viewing us as machines. It's important to ask yourself your why to all this healing. Is it solely just so you can be better in a selfish way, or better for your relationships and community? It has taken me quite a long time to get to this part, so thank you for sticking around, but it's important to understand the roots of self-care, because it isn't just this thing that popped up in the 2020s or the 2010s even, or even the 2000s. This is an ancient practice that probably dates back even further, but what I was able to find through my research is that the term self-care originates in the medical field during the 1950s. This concept of self-care originates from the wellness community in the 1950s. It was used as a way for patients to have autonomy and agency over their treatment plans, offering them different activities that they could choose from in order to kind of diversify the type of care that they were getting. And this was heavily used later during the Black Panther movement, which is a political radical movement of Black activists who came together to really create, I'm going to keep using the word radical, I'm sorry, to create truly, I can't think of a better word, but radical change in their communities. The society that they existed in did not view their lives as valuable, therefore they took it upon themselves to take care of their communities. They implemented different practices, whether that was mental health resources. A big one that they did was after-school lunch programs and different community-based healing methods to nourish the mind, body, soul, and heart of their community. It was not achieved by one person alone. It was not an individual pursuit. It was collective care, and it was radical. Activists like Angela Davis and Erica Huggins used yoga and meditation while they were incarcerated as a way to fight back, as a way to resist, as a form of self-preservation against oppressive systems. With them using practices like self-care and meditation, it brings us to what is real self-care. In the oversaturation of the wellness space, self-help, and self-care, it's really hard to pick out what is real, what is fake, and what actually works. How can you protect your peace without falling into isolation? And what do we do when the system itself won't change? Self-care is community care. That is a principle that I've stressed a lot in this video, and I hope that it's annoying you because you remember it. You cannot heal yourself on your own. I think that it is really important to learn how to love yourself and take care of yourself, and have seasons where you are in partial isolation just so you can tune into your own authenticity and needs. But like Bell Hooks writes, self-love is the principle and foundation for us to then be able to love others without using them as a means of escape. And I'll put the exact quote in there, but self-love is so we can show up better for our community. It is not so that we can only keep that access to love and resources, knowledge, and care for ourselves. Values and boundaries are a really big principle to what real self-care is, because it is how we can nourish our minds and in turn nourish our bodies and soul. And this is an idea that is stressed in the We Can Do Hard Things podcast with Pooja Lakshman. I hope I'm saying that right. And Pooja wrote a book, I believe, about self-care and how to heal burnout while also unpacking that it's not entirely your fault. The game has been rigged. The system is designed for us to stay oppressed, sick, exhausted, so that we can't fight back. And she says that there's a very common trend with women specifically of being put in martyr mode. And essentially, women will burn themselves out to the point of complete and utter exhaustion because they think they're doing it for a greater cause. And it's no fault to women specifically because they have been sold this idea from society that they have to be everything to everyone but themselves, which is not a sustainable way to live by any means. While I was doing further research, I had already had this concept of radical self-care in mind, but I came to find that there's a book by Nicole Stewart on radical self-care. She identified different foundational practices of what it means to care for yourself in a way that is expansive and sustainable. She identified remember and reconnect, rebalancing and regulating, rituals and rhythms, rest and restore. And all of those principles are beautiful, and I will probably get the book because I want to learn more about them, but those are very beautiful guiding principles of what it means to have real self-care. I love the idea of rituals and rhythms instead of this rigid routine of life, and it has to look the same every single day, because that is not a reality for a lot of people, especially women. She brings up a really interesting point of regulating to dysregulation, and I think that is a really potent and on-the-nose commentary of society as a whole. There's a quote that says, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society," by Dr. Jiddu Krishnamurti. And it is no badge of honor or no prize to be won saying that you are perfectly pure and regulated to the dysregulation of capitalism. If you are someone that is constantly optimizing yourself, tying your worthiness to your productivity, and viewing yourself as genuinely something to be fixed instead of a human body to be experienced, that is doing yourself and your community a disservice. Real self-care is about taking time to slow down. It is about resting without shame. It is about finding ways to remind yourself that you are here to live and not here to just work. And I've identified a few things just to build off of Nicole Stewart's principles of self-care that, to me, is what the essence of self-care really should be. And there's a larger conversation at hand of collective care. Self-care is not just something that can be achieved in isolation, and it is not one person's job to fix the world. The way that capitalism has been designed is to keep us sick, is to keep us out of reach of resources that we need to function. And it's not our fault. I think that's an important thing to note. Like, it is not your fault that this is the way that the world was structured. But I do think that it is our responsibility to make it better. Parents always say that they want their children's lives to be better than the ones that they had. And so I think someone coming into my adulthood, I really do want to find a way to make not only my existence better, but existence for people that I love and the people that don't exist yet. That way they come into a world that is healthy, good, and a one that they feel capable of making real change in. So self-care to me is rest without shame. Rest without this constant narrative of, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. Oh my God, I could be doing so much more. Oh my God, I have blah, 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 blah. No. And that's not something that's easy, but things like affirmations really, really work to rewire your brain to, instead of always shaming yourself and always being your hardest critic, loving yourself through it, saying, I'm allowed to slow down. I'm allowed to go at my own pace. My worth is not tied to what I get done in a day. My worth is not measured by how much or how little I do today. I am inherently worthy of love, kindness, and stillness. Leaning into joy, whimsy, and play, especially for women. I love talking to my female audience, but especially for women, joy is an act of resistance. When there are oppressive systems in place, pushing you down, wanting to see you weak, and wanting to see you, what's the word? wanting to see you powerless, joy is a way that you can fight back. Smiling when they want to see you crying and sad and curled up in a ball is a way to say, I am fighting for myself. I am finding the light even in the darkest of situations. And sharing that joy outwardly and encouraging others to find their own joy and join in with your joy is such a beautiful thing. That's why art is such a transformative and vital part to big movements, especially political movements. Art, some of the best art emerges during some of the worst political conditions because art gives people something to smile about. It gives people something to feel like their life isn't so small and so limited. Art gives people hope, and hope is how people keep going. Embracing cyclical living and devotion over discipline. Instead of embracing this idea that you need to have the same drive, the same capability, the same amount that you can produce in one day, instead, give yourself space to live in cycles, space to exist and fluctuate as humans naturally do. Movement is a big one. Movement like dance, walking, working out in whatever form is good for you and your body, and allowing that to change through your different cycles at different times of the month, not shaming yourself for not being able to go to the gym 5 days a week, but instead maybe you want to go twice and do yoga. Instead, maybe you just want to do light movement and go on a walk. Movement in whatever form has been proven by many studies to be one of the best things for our mental and physical health. And last but not least, something that I want to end us off, and it is going to connect to an upcoming episode, is connection. Connection is one of the biggest forms of self-care that we can do. We were not meant to exist alone. We were not meant to figure out our problems in isolation and be self-reliant. This individualistic narrative that we've been sold is a fallacy, and it promotes this egocentric way of living, of saying, I am better than you, I can do this on my own, I don't need anybody else. It is okay to admit that you need someone, to admit that you need help, and to reach out. That is how we heal. It has been seen in so many different transformative movements against oppressive systems, and we currently live under an incredibly oppressive one that is really scary to think about. And as scary as it is, I've also seen how unifying it can be and how people are starting to band together more and show up for each other in community. Community care is self-care. Self-care is community care. You are not something to be sold. You are not a product. You are not something that needs to be constantly fixed. You do not need to constantly be policing yourself in the pursuit of worthiness and in the pursuit of basic human self-care and wellness. Wellness was never meant to be something that is out of reach and something that you have to earn or buy your way into. You are inherently deserving of all of those good things, just as you are right now. I love you so much. This is a conversation that I'm very, 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 very passionate about. And I appreciate you listening. This was a lengthy episode, but it's because I have a lot to say and a lot of good stuff to say. I had a really fun time researching this, and I'm sure I will do many more episodes relating to this, but I think this is like the principle of my podcast, is just having these conversations and recognizing that you're not alone. Obviously, I say that in every single episode, but also just understanding that through caring for yourself, you are inherently caring for your community. It is your right and it is your responsibility to take care of yourself as an act to fight back against oppressive systems that want to see you down, want to see you weak, want to see you incapable of standing up and fighting back. I've already talked your ear off, so I'll leave you at that, but I just want you to know that you deserve rest and care and love right now, as you are. There's nothing you need to do, become, change about yourself to earn that. I love you so much, and please go slow down, take a deep breath, and practice some form of real self-care for you this week. Practice some form of real self-care for yourself this week. You deserve it. I love you so much. Forehead kiss time. Also, Digging Deep turns 2 years old very soon. I'm so excited. Okay, I love you so much. Talk to you soon.